Christopher Lucas with the Office of the Tenant Advocate. And this is basically the second year that our office has put on this part of a workshop for veterans with our office. I'm a veteran of the United States Marine that basically has, from last year, I definitely saw what need there is in the community. I have tried to spearhead in my office to add more resources, and I definitely plan to do a little bit more this year. Now that I can see I have a partner at the mayor's office I can talk to this year, because I think last year there was actually it was in flux or something that you were saying, and all that. But I'm gonna start off with Mr. Ross and let him do his spiel. And since he's definitely a cooler Marine, I guess he was a sniper. He can pull this off. Wow, it's hot. So, Mr. Ross, I'm gonna let you start with Mr. Eli Ross. Let him do his thing.
All right. So, yes, my name is Eli Ross. I'm Director of Mayor Bowser's Office of Veterans Affairs. I have been in this position a year on Monday, so we're coming up right on the anniversary. So it's a pleasure to be here. We've got some great veterans that I see Benita out there, and she's always in our office helping out. It's a pleasure to be here because housing is one of the most important issues for our veterans locally and our veterans nationally. If you think about the way that we have approached as a nation veterans issues, it has been on a housing first model that started in about 2008 under the Obama White House, and the Joining Forces Initiative was really the way that we started tackling veterans homelessness and seeing the decrease in numbers nationally. We've been very successful here locally, but there's still a lot of work to be done, obviously. And so where we are as a city is we're like all cities, we're reliant on federal funding for a lot of our veterans programs. That's administered through the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, but then it's sort of doled out and oversaw by our Office of Housing Authority, things of that nature. So there's a really strong local federal partnership that goes into housing our veterans. And then we're also dependent on VA grant programs, the grant per diem programs that we have here in the city. There's 4 transitional homes that are in, I believe, wards 7 and 8, and those have about 214 beds at any given point in time, and that's really a description of the pipeline to get a veteran from being homeless to being housed. And then the next step is getting them into permanent housing, which is really what this conversation is about, of getting them into that permanent supportive housing and then making sure that they're staying there. And so I think the call of the question, the reason that we're all here today, are some of the challenges that we're facing. And so when a veteran who's on the HUD-VASH voucher gets into a permanent supported house, they're basically getting a Section 8 voucher from the Health and Urban Development. I can never remember what it stands for, but they're getting wraparound services from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, all those social services, healthcare, things of that nature, so that they can be successful. Some of the barriers that we're seeing right now is that in the geographic region, in 2017, we got no more HUD-VASH vouchers allocated, which means that there's then a backlog. So if a veteran is functionally homeless and in a transitional facility, there's a significantly longer waiting time to get that veteran into a permanent house. So that is a challenge. And then obviously if you listen to some of the presentations this morning, there's always some consternation about what the federal budget is going to look like. DC and every jurisdiction that is fighting veterans homelessness is very dependent on federal financing for these programs. The president's budget cut all of these programs. And then the Senate and the House bills have put those back in. So largely I think we're going to be okay. From a grant per diem perspective, this is a unique year where grant per diem programs are being judged on different metrics than they have been over the last 20 years. Those grants just came out early last week. I'm very happy to say that all of our grant per diem programs here in the city were funded. And so that means that we're going to be able to continue to fight homelessness on an ongoing basis in the way that we have. But I think I'm going to turn this over to Cecil here in a second. What we have to do, and the biggest challenge that we always see is finding that starting point and making sure that our veterans are taken care of, because veterans often swim in a sea of good with so many different programs and opportunities out there that are hard to take advantage of simply because you don't know where to start. And so building a strong sense of community here in the district is integral to making sure that veterans are taken care of holistically, but especially when it comes to housing and building that strong partnership between veteran organizations, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, the mayor's office, and our landlords, and obviously the Office of the Tenant Advocate, whom I call at least twice a month, I'm sure. And so it's a really strong, robust program that we're using. A lot of community connections, but you know, we're more than happy to take any questions and drill down on specifics that I know Chris has got some questions for us. Go ahead.
Well, one of the questions, and I was gonna turn it over to Mr. Byrd first, but I'm gonna hold my questions actually, because I want to hear from Mr. Byrd, and hopefully we get joined by some of the other panelists. But Cecil Byrd, this is Cecil Byrd. I'm gonna let him introduce himself and his program. He's a wealth of information, to be honest. I mean, last year, he literally was the person who I would say,
Talk too much.
no, actually, you motivated me. So, Mr. Byrd.
Thank you, Chris. Some people have different ways of releasing their stress and dealing with things that are going on. Thanks for letting me come again. My name is Cecil Byrd. I'm the executive director of the National Association of Concerned Veterans. We're one of the oldest active Vietnam veteran organizations in the country. We were established in 1968. I'm sorry. We came to D.C. in 1972, and at our peak, we had about 3,300 chapters around the country in over 35 states. And when VVA decided that they wanted to become a congressionally chartered veteran service organization, those were our members. So we supported them, and we backed off of membership, and we've been dying ever since. I'm a little concerned, obviously, about the number of veterans that are here. If we look at the statistics, there's, I think it's like 8% of our country are veterans now. We probably still have 22 million or 20 million veterans, but the largest percentage of them are all over 70 years old, 70 and older. So you got 60% of the veteran population that's average age is 70 or older. So the Vietnam era is 70, Korea 80, World War II 90. So you can do the math, and you can look at the attrition rate, and that's it's unbelievable how many World War II veterans are dying every day, and that's why I was so pleased about bringing the World War II vets to D.C. and to check out the memorial. And that was and people in the airports were applauding, and a lot of these men and women were saying how much that meant to them. Anyway, 3 times a year in the district, I've been here since '78, so I think I can speak a little bit. 3 times a year in the district, especially, we recognize the veterans, and that's, obviously Memorial Day, July 4th, and Veterans Day. And everybody wants to say thank you for your service and all that. The reality is, talk is cheap, and there should not be in the nation's capital. We should be the model for veterans programs and answers and solutions to the issues of veterans. And we're not. We're not doing it in the schools. We're not doing it in our agencies. We're not doing it, with all due respect, in the mayor's office or the council members. Eli has been doing a really good job, but there's so much more to do. If you've all seen if you saw Field of Dreams, you know that if you build it, they will come. If you don't build it, they will go. And so in the district, the nation's capital, Gentrification is alive and well. We don't want old people, we don't want disabled people, we don't want unemployed people, we don't want returning people, we don't want problem people here. And so if you offer the programs, we are gonna come from everywhere, and we're gonna come to the nation's capital. But if the programs aren't there, they're not gonna come. And that is why we're running into so many, in my opinion, that we're running into so many problems. The other thing is, veterans are, and again, I'm making generalizations, which I probably shouldn't, because veterans are a microcosm of the entire population, but veterans are can-do people. They're self-sufficient people, they're independent people, and our organization started with community-based, grassroots, veterans helping veterans, help themselves. So it was up from the bootstraps, and you give us an opportunity, and we'll take it from there. So we can take care of ourselves, but we're not taking care of ourselves. By the way, I think I don't know what the population's estimates are now, but it's probably what, 30,000 in the district or something like that. But you see, that's just like the unemployment rate. The only way you're going to be counted, and the census, the only way you're going to be counted is if you self-report. So, if veterans don't say they're unemployed, they don't go to the unemployment office, and they're not out there trying to get jobs, then you're going to have a population which belies the actual population. And by the way, a lot of the veterans that I deal with and have dealt with for 45 years plus, they will ask once or twice, and after that, they're not gonna ask anymore. They're gonna say to hell with you, and they'll go on with their thing. I will be quiet. What we need to do, Chris, this is your second year.
Yes.
Eli, this is going on your second year.
We're about to hit lucky number 2. Yeah.
So I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna commit myself to doing. I'm tired and I'm old, but I'm gonna commit myself to making sure that next year this place is packed. Every single veteran in Southeast Vet Center, U.S. Vets, Veterans on the Rise, and in all the shelters, they should be here. They should be here, and we should have something for them, and we should be doing something for them. And the veterans that are okay, they should be here supporting the veterans that need a hand up. So thank you for letting me run my mouth and ramble. If you all have any questions or any suggestions on anything about veterans, let me know and let us know.
Well, I definitely want to follow up on that, because with the effort that I put out, and I think it was pretty good. It probably wasn't as best as I could have, but with short notice, or with the notice I had, I thought we would have had a lot more. Be that as it may, I think that that's the challenge that I gathered from last year as well, is that we are unfortunately a hard group to respond when it's basically us in need. And that's a hurdle that even in my office, I've realized that we have, because for some reason, I guess it's either not in us, or it's basically drummed out of us, asking for help and following up on receiving help. I think this goes to show, because I know that there are other veterans in this building, because I've seen them and I've talked to them already. But anyway, I'm going to let it be known that I want all of you to be as active as possible. You can definitely come close if you want to, because we're just going to do like a networking thing, almost like last year, because I really believe that's the best way that we function anyway. I don't think that we really do well when we just preach that, especially if it's something that we don't even know what the mission is. We really have no clear, defined goal to meet, I think. And with our situation, coupled with the situation in the District of Columbia, I think it makes it even harder, because I don't think that we like to be looked at as unfortunate or in need. which I think is a hurdle. So, I have a question for you, Mr. Ross. I would just like to know, what are the projections, has your office even considered, what are the projections, given the political climate, with the current programs that you do have, as well as the projections of possible proposed projects that I hope we would be looking towards? Because we know that there's an effort said to decrease homelessness. And I think we all know that there's definitely a good population of the homeless that, if polled, would be veterans.
Right. So, looking at it holistically, the mayor has made the commitment to ending homelessness across the board, not just for veterans, but for the entire city. And that's something that we are continuing to push forward on. That's why we continue to put $100 million into the trust fund every year, which no other mayor has done, and trying to make and put affordable housing in front of everybody. Specifically, when we're talking about homelessness, we have a couple of unique challenges here in the district. We are a right to house jurisdiction, our surrounding jurisdictions are not. So we end up having stressed capacity across the board, and I think that we've done a very good job in maintaining our resources and providing a resource for our residents. But when we're starting to talk about veterans, all of these resources that we have at the district level are available to veterans. Then, because of their veteran status, they are eligible for additional federal benefits, which is why we see significant decreases in our veteran homeless population. The last PIT count that came out, it was conducted in February, I believe it was published in June, shows about 400 veterans are homeless in the District of Columbia. And so, like any statistic out there, you can, find a statistic to show you anything that you really want, but I think it's an indication of how well we are doing. It's also an indication of how much more we need to go. When it comes to projections, it's something that's very difficult to project what your homeless population is going to be. That's a hard model to build, and one that we don't really have the capacity to do, because when it comes to fighting homelessness across the board, that really falls into the basket of DHS, Department of Human Services. And so we're there to support them in engaging with the veteran population and putting them in touch with those resources. Because, to circle back to your previous point, we come from a culture generally where you spend years, decades not asking for help and not wanting to be that weak link in the unit. And then you find yourself inevitably on the outside of your unit, on the outside of the military, standing in a society where if you don't approach an organization and functionally raise your hand and ask for help, you're not going to receive it. And so we are the last people to actually recognize that we need the help, and we have to be able to, Cecil's point, we have to build it, even if they don't come. But we have to build it so that we are ready for when they do come, because I firmly believe that that is a way that we will build that sense of trust, build that sense of community, and be able to address the problem when somebody functionally has raised their hand. And I think in a lot of ways we're being successful in that endeavor. So I think we have a lot of work in front of us, not just for veterans housing, but for every veterans issue that presents itself. But I do think, and Cecil will back me up on this, that I say this all the time, I'm excited about where we are, and I'm excited about where we're headed, because I think we are building the thing that we've never really had, which is a sense of community in and amongst ourselves. And that way, when a veteran is walking down the street or a veteran is at an event like this, they will grab all the information and be able to have it ready when that person needs it. I think I was really inspired today by the number of non-veterans that stopped at my table to ask about resources available for a veteran that they knew somewhere else. And so what that means is that we have a full force multiplier, and that individual who isn't necessarily a veteran is carrying the message to help. And that's something that's really important, and it's really exciting to be a part of. And I think as we build that, we're going to be successful.
And just to follow up on that, what do you think could be helpful to your office to either make sure the word gets out, as well as how to promote your office to the general public.
Right. So Cecil hit on this in the very beginning, and it's the age disparity in our veteran population. If you look at the numbers right now, we have 29,470 veterans in the District of Columbia. 65% of that is age 55 or older. And I think a really great indication of where we are with that population is at homelessness stand down in January. There were about 800 veterans that walked through the VA Medical Center. I think I personally talked to and signed in on our sheet probably close to 500 veterans that day. 1 in 5 didn't have an email address. And we start looking at government services and in the engagement models and methodology and communications, everything is a web-based platform, and on the front end or on the back end. And if you have a population that isn't using that platform to gain information, you need to start being creative in the ways that you do your engagement. But you flip that around, our largest influx of veterans into the district are your post 9/11 veterans who are tech savvy and using web-based platforms in ways that I yet do not comprehend. And so that creates two different engagement models that you have to be very cognizant of and you have to deliver on. One of the things that we've started doing is we've started relying on paper-based informational handouts, which we have had really positive feedback about. We're engaging with the community and using them to be that force multiplier to take this information out into the community. And so, to another point, also building really some sense of stability in our office of that this is what you're going to get when you engage with us. You know that you can rely on us, and you know that we are going to do what we say we are going to do. And in the off chance that we can't do something, you know that we're going to be direct about that as well, but we're going to get you the resource that you need. And so it's one of those scenarios where you wish you could snap your fingers and be where you want to be, but where we are is really building a lot of those relationships, expanding those relationships so that we can be successful. And that's why I always say that I'm excited about where we are. I'm excited about where we're headed because I see some of the successes coming online. Some of them are small, others are big, but where we are going forward, I think we have a solid foundation for success largely.
Chris, could I interrupt just a second?
Definitely.
Could we let people here introduce themselves and ask the questions that they get them involved? And I didn't mean to preempt you, but
Oh, no, I was gonna go around and have no problem with that. Are you all ready? Yeah. Okay. Plus, I was trying to cool down, to be honest.
you all sit at the table.
Oh, okay.
We don't have.
Yeah, you can all come to the table,
Okay.
definitely.
No, we just thought you guys were panels and we had to sit back here.
Well, we all,
No, you're the
we're all
panel.
veterans. No, this is all for you. This is definitely for you all. But I'm gonna start right here, with this young lady right here.
Okay,
I'm-
thank you.
I'm
I'll
Barbara.
go around as many times as we need to, so you can
Okay.
just ask one question, and I'll go around, introduce yourself, please, and if you would,
Oh.
if you can tell what ward you're from.
I'm Barbara Darby, currently in Ward 8. I'm a service disabled veteran-owned small business. I do tenant placement. And like you said, the information, how it's getting out and when it's going to get out is really very important because as a veteran myself, I too get frustrated when trying to get help and nobody picks up the phone, nobody calls back. So it is frustrating. And yes, we do walk away and do our own thing, which is like Mr. Bird said. So, it is what it is. But if don't nobody respond to us, we're not going to respond back to you. It's just that simple. So.
Hi, my name is Maria Shu. I was in the Army from 85 to 88, and my youngest son is actually a U.S. Marine. I wanted to know, do a lot of veterans that become civilians, do they have drug issues?
Yep.
Yes?
A lot of ones we deal with. It's about self-medication. When you get frustrated, when you get stressed, when you get challenged, when you have barriers, when things don't happen the way that you think they should, then I'm sorry, I missed your question.
But I don't understand because one thing that I really liked when I was in a soldier was that, soldiers have a can-do attitude, right? There's something to be done and they do it. So why can't they carry that sentiment when they're civilians? You know, that, okay, I'm not in the service anymore, what do I need to do to get on with my life? Like, what kind of job do I wanna get, where do I wanna live? They should carry that same sentiment that they had, the
Ma-
can-do attitude.
Maria,
Instead-
that is a,
Instead of, I'm just gonna let myself fall apart, I'm gonna start drinking, I'm gonna start taking drugs, that's not,
Maria, the majority, in my opinion, from my experience, the majority of veterans, the majority of veterans are able to make a successful readjustment back into civilian life. The veterans that we deal with are the ones that have serious difficulties in making that transition. So the ones that are making it, you never hear, that's that silent majority. So out of the 30,000 or whatever that you're talking about, you're 80% of them, sorry about that, 80% of them are gonna be fine and gonna make, gonna be able to make, and they're not gonna have those, and they're gonna do exactly what you're saying. Why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? But, and by the way, another reason that they were successful while they were in the service, again, in my opinion, is because there was an NCO around that put a boot in their butt when they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And in the service, if you screwed up, you might have got a reduction in pay or a reduction in rank, or you got put in a brig or whatever, but you had three squares, you had a place to put your head, and you had a job to come back to when it was all over with. So that's another reason why, in my opinion, they were. But the people that we're dealing, the guys, the men and women that we're dealing with that are struggling today, they have the issues that you think, that you said, and I know you don't, that you said, why can't they not submit to this or subject themselves to it? Why can't they just say no? Why can't these men and women, they need support that we're not giving them, and that's the people we're talking about.
And I'd like to follow up on that myself. Now, granted, the drug thing is not my problem. But what I do believe, because some people can say the weight thing maybe, and I'm definitely not fitting the picture of a Marine, I think it's the camaraderie. I've had to self-check myself and realize that without having that, I realized that I was in the best shape of my life in the military, not because, I mean, some of it was, yes, I was doing it for myself too, but I think once you buy into that camaraderie thing, it's almost like, I guess you can say it's a form of a peer pressure, but I guess it's a kind of a good peer pressure. And once some people, I know with myself, I don't feel as motivated being in the gym all by myself. And I definitely am not going to yell out cadence by myself when I'm running. Now, probably I should, but I think it's a lot of times it's that, and there's some, as Mr. Bird was saying, everybody, period, is just not as strong as they may appear to be when they're a part of a unit. You know, because like he was saying, within the military is very, I mean, you know that from day one. From day one, you know that this is no longer really under your control. And you must conform. And the easiest way to find peace in the military is to conform. So it just becomes kind of easier to stay straight, and you're being taken care of. So a lot of the things that you're faced into society that you, and I get this from some of the vets that come to my office, and I actually feel it the same way too. I was just having a conversation with Mr. Ross, and I believe that as vets, honestly, I think we should be the ones that's treated with the rock star status and not the Kardashians, but let me move on.
Hello, my name is Joyce Young, and I'm from a family of military guys from different branches. And I had a brother, like you said, he couldn't cope when he came out because he was walking around still shooting his weapon or whatever, and he just got frustrated. He couldn't cope, and he, killed himself at 43 years old. So, and we also, like I said, in my job, we work with a lot of vets that have different issues as well. The Federal Bureau of Prisons.
Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. My name is Commissioner Eddie Rhodes, and I'm also the executive director of an organization called Eddie Rhodes Army. And first of all, I'd like to say to the vets all over the country and all over the world, we sincerely thank you for your service. And we just don't say that as a passing fancy because we understand the sacrifice that veterans have made for this country, and we are forever grateful. But being the brother of a Vietnam era veteran, we saw, as you said, some people have been very successful, and then some have faced many issues that I feel that society should take a greater role in addressing. And in my capacity as a commissioner, I'm faced almost daily with the issues that veterans have. And one of the things that we have tried to do is find employment because for veterans, and we know that one of the easiest way to solve society's problems and to make people feel better is to have a job, to go to a job every day or every other day. It solves so many problems. It gives you a place. It gives you a place in society that you feel that you're still worthwhile. And my organization has been in business for over 22 years. And even though we're not grant funded or we weren't able to receive any money from any other sources, we used our own resources or the resources that we were able to come up with to create jobs every now and then. Some of the things that we do is you may have seen us in the paper or on television. We go around and we actually clean up the litter in the streets because we know that the way that people see your community is the way they treat it. And it doesn't take a whole lot of skill to clean up litter, and a lot of jobs people require high security clearance, or if you have been arrested, they didn't want to hire you. But in my organization, we just say you come, and we're going to try to find you something to do, because we know that you have made great sacrifices for our country, and we're just trying to pay that the best way that we can. We're trying to provide whatever services that we can for veterans, even if it's just helping them apply for resources. That's one of the services that we provide. But once again, I don't want to take up all of your time, but to all resources, to all the veterans all over the world, we thank you for your services.
Hello there again. How are everyone? My name is Benita Carrington. I am a veteran, a Vietnam veteran. I am one of the younger Vietnam veterans, and I'm 68 years old. So I understand what Mr. Bird was saying. They're 70 years or older. The reason why I'm one of the younger ones and hasn't been in service for as long as they did, because women had to be 21 years old. Ever since I was 8 years old, I wanted to be a veteran. I wanted to be a soldier. I wanted to be, when I saw the National Guard come out and put with this big tank and put a hole in the building, I always wanted to be a soldier from then on. I wanted to be General of the Army. Of course, that's the president, of course, right? But anyway, I wanted to do a 20-year career. I was able to go in with my sister. When she turned 18, I turned 21. We went out to California. Unfortunately, she died on duty. So we have the cemetery that she's buried. We have about 50 flags. You know, a lot of those flags belong to my relatives who are veterans. So it looks so good when you pull up and you see all these flags, and the first one you see is hers, so that's good. To address, I have a brother who's Vietnam twice, and I have another brother who was also in, so it's 4 out of a group of 12 family members that actually did their civic duty and became soldiers. And in answer to Mrs. Shu's statement, the veterans they have problems. They weren't able to get the services that they were supposed to get when they came back. We were told when you get to wherever you're going home, go in the bathroom and change into civilian clothes because you're going to get spit on, you're going to get hit with bottles, and all those type of things going to happen to you because they could not get to the congressman, but they could get to the soldier that was having uniform. It should be like in New York where you see this iconic picture of the lady kissing the sailor. That's how we should have been received. We didn't get a parade, we had to hide. And we've been hiding for 45 years. That's 4 generations where I should have had a house. My sons and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren should have had a benefit of me being in the service. I applied for veteran jobs with the VA. I didn't get the job because of nepotism. The person who was running HR put their friends in that weren't even veterans. So that's one of the reasons why we have this problem. The other reason, the medication, they were giving soldiers that were jumping out of planes, they were giving them medicine to make them jump out. They medicated us throughout. So when we get out, we don't have any medical benefits. We don't have any homes. We don't have any family support. Nobody wants to be associated with us. So we formed our own packs. And so we helped each other get along the best we could. We did drugs because we did prescription drugs. We bought any illegal drugs. We did anything we could to survive because we had to survive, have each other's back while we were in the service. So now we have to do the same thing. The only way we got started getting attention is the prime minister's wife was going with Mrs. Obama to baseball, Acapal, and Chevrolet baseball game at Nats. So they went through the 3rd Street Tunnel. The prime minister's wife said, "Who are these people?" And the chauffeur said, "Those are the Vietnam veterans. They didn't get any benefits, they didn't get any education, didn't get anything. So that's who they are, the Vietnam veterans." And so, of course, that was embarrassing to Mrs. Obama. So when she came back, she said, "Come here, little fella." And she said, "What are we going to do about these veterans? If I had known that they were up under the bridge, I'd have took another route because I'm embarrassed. We're the greatest nation, and here we don't have anything to offer our veterans." And so we didn't get the education. We didn't get a lot of things. Since you were a post-Vietnam veteran, I don't hardly know how to make a phone call on the cell phone. I can't remember my email address.
They didn't have the GI Bill for the Vietnam vets?
Yes, they had all of that. But they couldn't get it. They couldn't navigate. They're drugged up. They couldn't get medication. They could not go to VA like we can go now. Like now, I don't talk and be as vociferous as I should because I can't get my teeth fixed, and I don't like to be in the limelight, so I don't talk as much. And then I walk up to somebody and start trying to tell them about something. They're looking at me with my teeth looking like this. They're not going to pay that much attention to me. So we have all of those things to overcome. I can go in the hospital for heart problems because I don't have teeth and I can't eat the right foods. I eat gruel and oatmeal, and they'll pay $20,000, $30,000 for me to be there for 3 or 4 days so they can check out why I have a heart problem just because of my teeth. But they won't pay for me to get my teeth done, and all of these stand downs and things where they have for people to come to get dental care. It'd be so many there that you don't even get to get seen, and so you can't do anything. So that's the problem. But one of the good things that the Veteran Service Office, the Mayor's Office is doing, which to me is the best organization that works with the veterans, other than Mr. Bird's organization and other organizations such as his, is that I am now a member of the street team. The street team, what they do is I just got involved with that with the director and the young lady Carol who runs it. What we do, we meet and we go to the community, which we want ANCs and all the other different people to give us information of where are these people. If you don't tell them you're here, with the census, if you don't self-report, they don't know you're here. The numbers that he's quoting is the quotes of the people that they have registered. But there are about another 1/3 that aren't registered because they can't trust the VA. Because we can't trust anybody for 45 years. And so when we do go, we get a lot of, disappointments and long waits and all that type of stuff. We don't have transportation. We don't have to get us to those places. And then when we do get there, we don't like the way we are received. But I'm on the street team. The street team, what we do, we go into places like go to McDonald's or the places, the liquor stores, where we know that the veterans congregate, sitting around playing games or in the parks. So we give them information about what's happening with the Veteran Service Office, the mayor's office. And it was so well received that I'm walking down the street and people saying, hey, you got any more of those flyers? What can we do, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, the person that you said, people are coming to you, other family members. I got a brother, I got an aunt, I got a this. Give me some information. So that's helping us a lot. And that street team is really working because they're coming to me, asking me, what can we do this? So we need the community to tell us the spots that we need to hit so that we can get them more information and that they can become involved in what is happening and what is available to the veterans, and they're beginning to trust because other veterans are telling them, yeah, I got housed, I'm in this place, you need to go do this, you need to go to this place, that spot. So we are helping promote ourselves, but we need to know where those that aren't getting any services, we need to know where we can find them so that we can all become one big group, and then we can help each other because you need no soldier behind, you leave no veteran behind. So that's what we're trying to get done. And I thank you for your time. My name is really Benita Rhodes Carrington, and I didn't want to piggyback off my brother, Commissioner Rhodes. So I just wanted you all to hear what another veteran has to say.
Well, we want to hear what you had to say too. I would say last year, this was really a real eye opener for me. Mr. Bird can attest, this thing brought me to tears. Not to beat up on anyone or any one point. I had no idea of the strife that others that shared my, I would say, philosophy were going through. I didn't have a hard time coming out the military. I've had other than maybe not listening to advice in advance on healthcare, I was pretty successful. I've done Hollywood, I've done real estate on the other side. I've been the landlord, I've been the realtor giving the advice. Now, I will say, and I know this is on camera, I will say that when it came down to veterans, they got good deals with me. But going back to what we were saying, I think it comes down to something that is deeper, and it's definitely not going to get solved here, or it's not even going to get solved locally, and it's probably not going to get solved. Hopefully it gets solved within my lifetime. But I do think that we are a unique breed. And what I gathered from last year, and this is one of the reasons why I kind of, not say fought, but why I lobbied my office to one, again, have this. And to have it in this kind of setting, because I do believe that we function a lot better when we start coming together, when we brainstorm. I do believe that those traits of sterility, respect, discipline, all those things are still with us. Unfortunately, it may not be our society. And I think that's some of the problem that we also have, is that we have a society that, and I could be definitely wrong on this, I think that we're experiencing gratitude from guilt. I think that a lot of people that, unfortunately, that some people that say thank you for your service and things of that nature, I think are really just doing that out of guilt. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I am very wrong. I hope that I'm wrong. I'm wrong? You're wrong. Okay, so I'm not saying you. You're wrong. No, I'm just saying people that are not veterans. I'm not talking to, like I said, the way I look at it is like this. When they say 2%, I think by numbers. Yeah, 2% of this country are active in the military, because 1% of them, what I call, is legacy. That's people that's basically generational and within the family. The others are, I would say those that 1% are calling. And unfortunately, 2% is not a large amount of your population. And I cannot understand how 98% that have no idea of what you're really dealing with and how you are can really understand that. But I can totally understand once that 98 sees the aftermath saying something that may be pacifying. Like I said, hopefully I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too hard on people and things of that nature. And I'm glad that you're saying I'm wrong, because and all that. One of the questions I want to ask to Mr. Byrd, and I'm really hoping that everybody can address their questions more towards housing, because that's kind of what this is about. That is kind of an interest that I have more of a spearhead with. I know we have challenges and we have a lot of different things that need to be fixed. But the housing situation, I want to go to Mr. Byrd first and ask, what are some of the major challenges, some of the major types of needs day to day that you hear from veterans when it concerns housing, whether it's what they are looking for future or what they need right now? And then if possible, if you could even follow up with letting me know a little bit more of what, and both of you, what are your procedures and protocols when someone comes to you? So I'll start off with Mr. Byrd.
We all know what the biggest one is, and that's affordable housing. And what goes along with that is the environment. You can get housing, and you can get affordable housing, but if it's in the wrong place, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So, for example, we could get, I don't want to badmouth anybody, but we could get apartments in Wayne Avenue or somewhere in, and Ward 8, Ward 7, we can get up apartments all over the place, but it's like shootout at the OK Corral, and like the Mayor Kelly, she put our people at Park Morton. All right, Park Morton. Everybody knew what Park Morton was all about. Yeah. How can guys that are self-medicating and trying to go clean and sober and trying to stop using drugs, how can they be at Park Morton? All right. So anyway, affordable housing and the proper environment. The other thing is, you're right, Chris. Veterans want to be around other veterans, not exclusively, but there's the camaraderie that if I'm having a bad day, I know that Eli understands, what I'm going through or what I went through. Now, hopefully, we're lifting each other up, but so the camaraderie is very important. The other thing is we need to be preventive. We need to be proactive, and we need to prepare individuals. I'll give you an example. The housing voucher program. How can you give somebody a place to live, a voucher, and no furniture? How can you do that? All right? How can you do that? And how can you put them in an apartment when they came right out of the shelter or they come off the streets, and you don't have any case management? You're not supporting them in doing that. So, by the way, the returning citizen population, back in the day, 1/3 of all the new admissions in prisons were Vietnam veterans. Yeah. All right? 1/3 of all the homeless were Vietnam veterans. Okay? So those are our people. And by the way, Maria, those are the guys, men and women that shouldn't be that way. But that's what. Look, if you don't have coping skills, if you don't have life skills, if you didn't internalize what your mom and dad were supposed to be teaching you or trying to teach you, and the sergeant and the military, if you didn't internalize that, You know, if you think God is going to strike you dead, then you're going to live a certain way. But if you don't think he's around or watching, or she, then you know, you're gonna do whatever you want. So to answer your question, those are just a few of the things. Before I stop, Walter Reed, some of the richest real estate in this city. Do y'all know what the McKinney Act says? Do y'all know about the McKinney Act? The McKinney Act says that any surplus property, federal before it is gotten rid of, you have to give first priority to a homeless component. All right? And so all of these groups that got on the bandwagon for helping the homeless veterans and getting on these military installations that were so BRAC, all right, base realignment and closure. So what they do is they would jump in, and they're the developers, and they got the deep pockets, and so they would go after these properties. And what would they do? They would get my brother here and get him involved and say that we're taking care of the veterans. And they would pay him. They would say, hey, man, this isn't going to be developed for 3 to 5 years. Why don't I just give you $500,000 or $100,000 or whatever, and you can get these properties over here, and you can do your thing here. So this, mark my words, that's the deal that has already been cut with Walter Reed. All right? And somebody up there that's telling you that we've got the veteran thing taken care of and we're looking out for them. That we watch and see how many affordable programs. By the way, veterans can do anything. I'll shut up, Chris. One more thing. Forest Glen. You know Forest Glen? Forest Glen Annex. Walter Reed Army Medical Center Annex. You know what it used to be, right? It used to be a girls' finishing school. Okay? That is the most historic, or it was. It had 10 different theme. Anyway, feudal castle, Dutch windmill, Japanese pagoda, hacienda, and it had a old Victorian, huge theater and everything like that. The Army let it deteriorate. And we should have, it used to be where the Second World War, where they came out and where they got readjusted, psychological treatment to come back in. That was the most disgraceful thing that ever, we could have completely redeveloped and maintained and saved that. They're doing the same thing with Old Soldiers Home. I can go on forever. I'll shut up. But this is a sin and a disgrace, and it's criminal what we're allowing to happen in the nation's capital. By the way, Senator Santorum, when he was in, I don't think he was a senator at the time, guess what he did? He wrote legislation to give away a piece of the Old Soldiers Home. Right. Guess what he did? He wrote the legislation in such a manner that the only people that could get that property was, guess who? The Archdiocese. Okay? At the Archdiocese. So, and you know what's happening over there? That place isn't housing more than 500 veterans. Okay, and it's a golf course, it's a garden, I'll shut up, bye-bye. Yeah.
I'm watching Eli, I'm actually.
I won't say any more anymore.
Part of me is laughing.
Okay. But, and the Old Soldiers Home, when it was in the paper yesterday, regarding some of the facts that you were just talking about. But the question I wanted to ask is, how do we used to take care of our veterans at one point, and then I think who was it? General Patton. The veterans came down and they had a camp down down on the mall, and I think it was General Patton that came through, and General Patton, I think he was a colonel then, and he destroyed the camp. And it just seemed like there was a deterioration for veterans from that point on. So how did we get to the point where at one point we were taking care of our veterans a little bit more than we're doing now? How do we get from that point to where we are now. I know that I'm a politician. I'm gonna, but the best way, well, one of the ways that you get things done is you have to lobby these folks. You have to vote. You have to go and let them know that we're drawing a line in the sand. You have to start taking care of our folks. And I'm trying to figure out, how do we get from delivering services at one time to virtually in the 70s and the 80s, there were virtually no services at all. We saw people living under the bridges and we saw people living under the tunnel. How do we get from we were providing services at one point to what we have now?
And before we go on, I wanted Matt. I'm sorry, I wanted Eli to follow up on the first thing, but I want to kind of interject right after you.
Well, no, we'll just jump to this question. That's fine. So I would argue that the VA that we have now, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, is the most responsive, is the most forward-thinking VA that we have probably ever had as a country. The VA that it was when I got out of the service in 2008, they was struggling to connect veterans with care. That was due to due to a number of different things that we could have an entire symposium and panel on. The VA that I got out and enjoyed in 2008 was far better than the VA that was there for Vietnam veterans. It's an evolution. It's the second largest federal agency with one of the largest budgets. That's 370,000 people. And to get it to march in one different direction when it had been marching in another direction has been a difficult process, but I can tell you from both experience in my position now and as a veteran that utilizes their services is that they are doing their utmost to pivot from a faceless bureaucracy to one that's engaging with the community and trying to find ways to connect veterans with their services. And it's an evolution. They're doing much better than they were last year. They're doing much better than they were 5 years ago, but there's still a long way to go. Part of it is, and will always remain, is getting veterans connected with the services, because we all know, and then we've sort of hit on it here, is that if a veteran has one bad experience with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, or if they have one bad experience with the DMV, they're going to check out. It's not just the VA, but it's the VA is the only one that's providing these services. And so when they check out, it's incumbent on us, and this is where I really view where my office comes in, is to have those really strong community connections with organizations, with people, with veterans, so that we can get them plugged back into the system. Because if you're 28 and you get out and you can walk and stand up straight, you're great. But all those injuries that you don't feel at 28 and you feel at 38, that's a big jump. And then we start talking about 50, 60, when you really need those resources and this time has really expended, it's harder to get plugged into those services. It's harder to take advantage of that. And so that is one of the things. But I would say this, if I can leave you with one thought, it's that care for our veterans now is better than it has ever been. That doesn't mean that it's a finished process, but it is the best that it has ever been. And it's because local communities are stepping up, state level governments are stepping up, and the federal government has recognized that the VA that was is not the VA that should be. And so we're still putting resources into it. We're in the longest war that we've ever been in our history, and so we're churning out veterans every day. It's incumbent on us, and to your point, is to engage with our political leaders to say this is what we need to be doing, because part of what I view my mandate is to always keep veterans in the conversation, because it's very easy for us to lull ourselves into a false sense of this war is just continuing to go on and it's in the background, and that can't be the case. We have to remember the service and sacrifice that people are making, and the cost of war comes with a back-end cost of support and care, and we always have to keep that conversation going. So at the state level, at the local level, at the federal level, you've got to engage with your elected representatives and keep that as a centerpiece of your conversation, because where we are and how we got here was because people stood up and said this can't be, and we have to keep that going. And so I think we owe it to not just ourselves and other veterans, but to the generation that's going to come after us.
That's true. Also, going on what you were saying, I think one of the things, and I think it goes along with what you were just saying, I think one of the things that has brought us at least leaps and bounds, no matter how I may personally feel about how society rewards it. I think is the veterans now, information I think is power and knowledge is key. I've always lived by that. And I think more and more veterans, I think we have, not to knock any other veterans, because all my uncles and fathers served as well. I just think that we do have a more maybe sophisticated or even educated military force. So when they're coming out, there are more services out there and they are connected. It's just like what I'm about to bring up. How many people here know of DOPA or know of TOPA and know what it means? One person, or two people, three, well. So my question would almost, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but my question goes into this. Because especially since TOPA has become a hot, okay. Wow.
See if this is the question you want to end on. Do you have any other questions?
No, well, this goes into what I want to get into, is that I believe that as veterans, we need to find a way to lobby for stronger VA rights, stronger VA programs. Like I said, I may be pipe dreaming and I may be definitely prejudiced towards the way I feel, but I definitely believe that healthcare should be a right. I would, if I had a different focus of healthcare, I wouldn't have had a blood clot and not knowing what to do about it and lost all my money. But I think that housing should definitely be a right. And what I want to know, out of one of the
I
programs,
lost all my money and then I had the blood clot, so we just, I'm sorry, Chris.
no, but one of the programs that has become a hotbed that I've looked at, and there's a challenge sometimes of me wanting to go back into the real estate world because I know I could do it there where it's hard for me to do it from within, is because the way DOPA and TOPA works. And as far as DOPA, is the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, it gives basically a tenant the first right to purchase. It's basically, it was theoretically, and DOPA is basically the district's option, which the mayor can exercise, and I know I'm about to put him on the hot seat with this, but I know in my former career, I organized veterans to sometimes buy their own buildings or buy real estate to maintain their affordability and sold it that way. And I want to know, one, I think a lot of people out here, you all need to know how strong these rights are because there's a lot of veterans that could be helped by, and you could be helping yourself by assisting them with the purchase of their properties to maintain affordability. So that kind of goes into, and like I said, because I think that we just need stronger programs. I really believe that we need stronger programs. I believe that, you know, if there's anything really in corporate welfare, I definitely believe, and I know that veterans wouldn't want to hear it this way, but I definitely think that we need some form of veterans housing subsidy, whatever. I don't like the word welfare either. But I would like to know under the specific, the DOPA Act, especially since the mayor does have an effort to create housing and create shelters and things of this nature. And we know that right now, buildings are basically selling immediate, almost a term that you use. I use it literally every day when I get into it with tenants that they have to basically bring them home. It's a field of dreams for landlords right now. Landlords are basically, and developers are looking at it like, hey, if I build it, they will come. And I think the same could be said if there was an effort made, and I can only speak locally, because at the same time I also look at DC should have always been set up as a model, should always be a model for some form of, if we want to call it socialism, whatever you want to call it, but it should definitely be a model for humanism. You know, 70% of the residents of the District of Columbia are tenants. So I just like to know, outside of other programs, I guess to wrap it up, are there any efforts being made or even talked about concerning DOPA and putting units aside for veterans?
Right. At present, there's nothing that I am aware of, but I think it's largely because this is not something that has been brought up by the community. You know, these rights sit primarily with the tenant. You know, it's incumbent upon the tenant to sort of stand up and say, I want to exercise this. Or for a tenant to sort of stand up and say, hey, District of Columbia government, this is a really great building and a great opportunity. And it's all about what I spoke about in the beginning of finding a way to build that sense of community, because it's important for the veterans here to stand up and say, this is what we need and this is how we can be successful. You know, we can't, you know, do it on our own. And I think that there's an opportunity. And I honestly, to just be direct, I don't think a lot of people know about their rights as tenants and how strong they are here in the district and how they could theoretically leverage them for veterans. You know, we are largely, and I've said this in the beginning, largely reliant on federal programs. Veteran housing as it exists in the city that isn't federal is reliant on corporate tax credits and project-based vouchers. So there's still that federal reliance. And so you always have to find a way, even if you can exercise those rights, of how do you capitalize the project. And so there's a larger conversation going on than simply the rights being there. But I think what it comes down to is having a community that is engaged and having the right corporate and nonprofit partners there at the time so that we can build something that we can all be proud of.
Well, as they were wrapping me up, here's what I would like to happen from this second year of this. And I'm going to dedicate myself to do this and to work closely with you gentlemen, as well as the others at the panel. I definitely think that we need to make sure that all these resources are out here. And so I mean, I almost really think that every veteran that comes to your office should be contacting me. I think that every veteran that contacts my office, I hope you don't get upset because they're going to have your name.
Bonita knows this, is you hand out my information freely because this is a 7-day-a-week job. I'll help anyone. So you do that, and all of you, I'll make sure you have all my contact information. Please do the same.
But what I'd like all of you all to do, honestly, I really hope all of you take the opportunity and the time to go to the Office of the Tenant Advocate's website and not only put questions and concerns that you may have concerning housing specifically for veterans, but if you have information, resources, whether it's housing, whether it's jobs, substance abuse, trainings, anything. I really hope that you, as well as taking it back to others, I really want to see our website over inundated with veterans issues, because I really think that if we get that type of participation, one, I probably won't end up having to settle or having to just get the last hours. I think this is something that should be a focus. As you said, I mean, we're going to continue fighting these ever-ending wars, or we're going to have a lot of people coming home with a lot of need. And I think that if we try to deal with the challenge before it gets here, it may be a lot better, sooner than later. We may not even see it as a problem. But I think if we wait, I think that there could be even bigger problems if you have all these returning veterans that have been fighting in these endless wars in kind of a state of hopelessness, because I have no idea how my mentality would be if I had figured out, or if it came to a point where I felt that I couldn't be self-sufficient. They want me to kind of wrap it up, but if at all possible, I'm probably gonna get a little bit talking to. Want to?
One more statement. If we could get all of the veterans who have a TOPA, have TOPA possibilities, if we could get them to get housing where they are owners of their own properties, we would resolve basically all of the DOPA problems, because the veterans, these people that the DOPA are, they're our children and our grandchildren and whatever. So if I have a house then I have eliminated a lot of problems for my son, my grandson, and my great-grandson. So if we can get TOPA to help with the veterans getting housing, then we are solving basically two problems in one fell swoop. So I think that would work if we concentrated on TOPA for veterans and then take the rest for the doper that are left over, because we eliminate a lot of the problems as far as housing.
I don't know why Chris waited until the end of the period to bring up what may be one of the most important things that we talked about. Chris, thank you very, very much. And that's this is a good group, by the way. This is a really, really good group. And to answer your question, Eddie, is if you don't vote, you don't carry any weight. And if you don't understand democracy and the system and how it works, you're not going anywhere. And the reason that we don't have anything is because we don't vote and we don't stand up and be counted. We forced in the Vietnam, we forced the country to do something about veteran issues or the lack of veteran issues. We forced the whole country, colleges, universities, Congress, everybody. You know how they killed the program? They hired the big mouth leaders of the veteran groups. They hired them. The government hired them. The schools hired them. And within a few years, you didn't hear nothing. You know why? Because when it messes with your paycheck, you don't rock any boats. The pendulum swings, by the way, and it's the greatest, closest thing we have to perpetual motion is the system. The system perpetuates itself, and they don't like it. The system doesn't like you doing the right thing. I'm sorry to say.
So
Did
in closing,
did you
ladies
do a
and gentlemen,
did everybody do a sign-in sheet?
and I'm giving it an evaluation. In closing, here's what I would like to say, because I'm past my time and I don't really feel like dealing with with that. What I would say is this: at our office, we on a regular basis do educational forums. We also do stakeholders meetings. If I can get not only your support and attention, but if you can get the word out to basically make sure that it is an issue for my office, I would really like to take this and have a stakeholders meeting where veterans can come in. We can have enough people with enough time, enough preparation that actually have the same missions on the top of their mind, and start dealing with this. Because I do believe that we have a lot of work to do. I mean, none of this is going to really get solved overnight. But I do think that if we form a lobbying group, so to speak, as you say, I mean, politicians have to answer. One last question.
Mr. Ross, something, please.
Pardon?
Mr. Ross, are you located on Vermont Avenue?
I am not affiliated with the U.S. Department of Veterans
Oh,
Affairs.
okay.
Yeah, I work for Mayor Bowser.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. So I'll get you all the info.
Okay, thanks.
I want to make this very, very clear, and I'm going to say it as loudly and as sincerely as I can. When we say thank you for your service, we really mean that. Okay, with all sincerity. If you leave out of this meeting with nothing else, I want you to understand that we seriously mean that. We understand what a great sacrifice it is just to be in the military, just to get through basic training. It's a great sacrifice. And so we really mean that, but I guess somehow it got lost during the years that we were supposed to be taking care of our veterans. But now, as the gentleman here said, the pendulum is beginning to swing. But we really have to get involved. And folks, you have to lobby your legislatures and make them pass these laws and start taking care of people like they're supposed to be taken care of. Because when they were in Vietnam, or when they were in the Middle East, or place all over the world. That soldier was there. He was making a statement for this country, and now it's time for this country to take care of him or her. But thank you.